in our lives. We've certainly earned it with the with the weather we've had to deal with recently. Okie dokie. Well, let's get started. Everyone knows the topic for today, I hope, which is around the skills of the future. And I honestly can't think of a topic that's more front of mind. Well, I think it's definitely up there in the top 5 of topics that are front of mind for businesses and business leaders at the moment. So whilst there's a huge amount of whilst there's a huge amount of information that we could get through, we're going to limit the webinar today to an hour. Don't worry, we always get the question around whether we're recording it. We are recording it, and we'll send that recording through afterwards, so you can rewatch or share it with other people within your organizations or network. As always, we're going to be sending through a feedback form later today, and we'd really appreciate it if you could fill it out. It just helps us to improve our content and future webinars, and lets us know what you guys are interested in hearing about in the future. So we've got 3 fantastic panelists joining us today. We've got Lance Trudell, who is joining us from the Centre for Entrepreneurs, who are actually co-hosting this webinar with us. Hi, Lance. I'm going to give you a quick bio, so correct me if I'm wrong anywhere. So Lance joined CFE earlier this year, really to help widen the accessibility and impact of the flagship NEF Plus program, and that is them opening up their program. That's New Entrepreneurs Foundation, I should say, opening up to fast growth companies to actually be able to train their own team on the skills needed to have a sort of entrepreneurial mindset. Lance is a strong advocate for entrepreneurialism and also the power of the growth mindset. He's passionate about providing the structure to support and nurture the next generation of future business leaders through the NEF Plus program. Before NEF Plus, he was at PwC. Before that, I believe, an international athlete. I'll just leave that dangling in the wind, but it's a man. Yeah, really interesting story. Looking forward to hearing from you later, Lance. We also have Sam Smith joining, who's the CEO and founder of the FinCap Group, and remains the only chief executive of a city broking firm. So Sam established FinCap in 2007, and today it's ranked the #1 nominated advisor and broker to AIM listed companies. Sam is, as you can tell, an absolute legend in the space, and passionate about ensuring that girls and women see only opportunities rather than barriers to success in whatever industry they want to be in. So very welcome, Sam. Thank you for joining us today. And last but no means least, we've got Joycey John. Joycey is CEO of 01 Founders, which is tuition-free coding centers with a job guarantee at the end of them to help improve diversity in tech. Joycey is passionate about education, entrepreneurship, and women's empowerment. I've got an incredible list of former positions that Joycey's held, including former Director of Education at Nesta, CIO at ADA, which is the National College for Digital Skills. She's been worked at the Department of Education, looking at EdTech, worked the Welsh Government, and really looking at the way that education works in this country. And before all of that, worked in banking across Singapore, US, and UK. So I think, I mean, no offense, Lance, but particularly Sam and Joycey got some really interesting perspectives, and really looking forward to hearing from all 3 of you today. Really want it to be an interactive session, so I will very quickly get through my intro. What I would say is that I've got some questions prepared for the panel, as always, but I'd be much more interested to have your questions and see what where your priorities and challenges are around skills of the future, and how you're thinking about that, and see whether our very knowledgeable panel can help. Before we get started, just a really quick introduction on me and Instant Impact. For those that don't know, I'm one of the founders and co-CEOs of the business, and we're in-house recruitment experts. So we embed teams as an extension of our clients' HR functions to deliver high quality hires directly. And as part of that, we really help our clients' HR functions to cope with global trends, whether that's working remotely, improving diversity, or what we're talking about today, which is really around how companies can develop their workforce. And what a year of change it's been. I think this week has been a particular week of reflection, being a year on from the murder of George Floyd and all of the Black Lives Matter protests that followed. And I think a period of real introspection for a lot of businesses, of course, in the UK, but around the world, and re-examining the way that workforces and employers interact, and ensuring that people can succeed within an organization regardless of background. And I think that these questions around skills and training and technology all have a really interesting interplay there. I mean, not least because of the demand. So this is a survey from World Skills UK that was published just earlier this year, and really highlights the digital skills gap, which is just one of many that we have in this country at the minute, which is that under half of UK employers, so 48%, think that young people leaving full-time education have a sufficiently advanced level of digital skill for the workplace, and 76% of those businesses believe that lack of digital skills would hit their profitability. So a bit of a mismatch there, and that's definitely something that we see working with our clients around technical skill sets, everything from data through to software engineering. I'm sure Joyce can provide a really interesting insight there. But anyway, that's quite enough from me. I just thought it would be a good place to start to provide the background of why we're particularly interested in the skills of the future. So let's get started with I think a question, if you wouldn't mind, Joyce. What would you think, in your opinion, would be a sort of the key skill of the next 5 to 10 years that we should be aware of?
I think some of the skills that we call as key skills or skills of the future, they've been important, in the past, in the present, and they will be important in the future. So things like creativity, communication, collaboration, teamwork, leadership, the ability to listen and speak. These skills will always be crucial. But the world that we're living in, which is highly automated, and with the pandemic, it's become even more digital. So I think in that kind of a world, in the next 5 years, the key skills I would say that will be crucial will be digital skills, entrepreneurial skills, and creativity. Because machines can automate a lot of things, but they can't yet automate creativity and judgment and entrepreneurial ability. So, I think it's a combination of skills that will be needed to thrive in the future.
That's really interesting. Let's hope they don't automate creativity. I think we'll all be in a little bit of trouble there. But Sam, I'd be really interested in hearing, obviously your business deals with so many fast growth of entrepreneurial businesses. Do you how do you see the sort of the skills there progressing?
So I think it's not dissimilar to probably what's happening right now and what's been happening for a while, which is relationships with clients, with customers, relationships with your team as a leader. Whatever you're doing, relationships are the fundamental thing. And I agree, as tech changes some roles to become less people-driven, the relationship side of the role doesn't change. So we feel it has been very important, it is currently important, and it will become more important. Those skills around how you build relationships are fundamental, which for us is about empathy. It's that EQ, do you understand what people need? It's listening, it's communicating, those people skills combined with the growth mindset where you're constantly challenging yourself, you're constantly thinking about, anything you do wrong isn't a failure. It's how do you learn? How do you move on? How do you become resilient? How do you negotiate? Team building, absolutely key. And also adapting. So those relationship skills, all of that comes in relationship building and project management. Those are the two I think that are critical and are probably undervalued at the moment. And we do find them, quite hard to find and quite hard to train as well, if you don't have them fundamentally.
That's really interesting. And would you say, well, I think quite a lot of these, I think what you were talking about there would probably be classed traditionally as soft skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you think the onus falls on, I suppose, society? Is it on training those skills? Is it businesses, individuals, education? Where do you think people should be training them?
I think it's a cross section. I mean, some of the skills are hard to train. So if they're not embedded in education, it is hard. So, the growth mindset, I found it very hard to get people to develop a growth mindset when they didn't have one, and they've got to their 20s and they don't have one. So there's some things which are harder to train. Things like negotiation, team building, where you've got the right attitude in the first place, but you're training for the skill, that is easier. So we will do a lot of work on pitch training, leadership training. So you not, as much as you might have the personality to lead, leadership skills have to be learned. It's experience. So those sorts of soft skills can be trained, but I think the onus is on you to constantly be learning. My ethos has always been challenge yourself out of your comfort zone as my personal, training mission. But I also, have learned a lot through work, and we do a lot of training people. So I think there's an equal responsibility to do that.
Fantastic. And Lance, I think this is a really good time for me to maybe pull you in. I think NEF Plus, and from our understanding of the program, is looking to fill some of these training gaps and these skills gaps in the organisation. What's the Centre for Entrepreneurs' perspective on all of this, and what's the problem you're trying to solve with the NEF Plus program?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right, and completely agree with what Sam was saying there. And I think what's often difficult at a moment such as this, and certainly through the pandemic, there's this big focus on digital, and of course that is all super important, and we must continue to develop that, but not at the expense of actually forgetting about as you say, Felix, what traditionally known as the soft skills. And I think for me, in terms of that, there is another piece, which is also the environment that that the organisations are able to provide for their talent, for their staff, whether that is internally or, in the case of NEF Plus, whether that's actually taking them outside of their normal working environment for, a period of time, couple of days each month, and really challenging them to really think and operate in different ways. And I think it's when you get the combination of those two right, then we see really powerful learning and adaptation, where the willingness is there from the individual, and you're also providing them with the environment where they feel like they can take risks, and they're not afraid to fail. And it's through that where they really build up those skills and resilience. And that's absolutely, with NEF Plus, something that we do provide with the 15 days of on-site learning, where we bring everybody together and provide a really safe space for people to test those skills and develop them to really then take back into their business.
Unmuting. I think that's a core skill of the future. Not speaking when muted. Joyce, I'd be really interested, because obviously 01 Founders, your ethos is around training those harder skills. Where do you think the interplay is between software development skills and some of this sort of growth mindset, the more entrepreneurial mindset?
Sure. So first of all, I'll say that we shouldn't call these hard skills and soft skills, because there's nothing soft about leading or communicating or building relationships. I think these are essential skills, future skills. Secondly, 01 Founders is not just about coding or hard skills or technical skills. In fact, it is about creativity, about empathy, about collaboration, communication, problem solving. In fact, we are the only school that has a unique model, which is peer-to-peer learning and gamified. So, you're not spoon-fed any curriculum. There are no lectures or exams. And at the end of it, there is no sort of certification, because for 2 years, you're learning by working with peers, solving real life problems, and it's completely free. It's tuition free for learners. And at the end of it, we provide a job guarantee. So you cannot provide a job guarantee with just technical skills. You need those emotional skills, the attitude that Sam was referring to around resilience, adaptability, the confidence to talk to people
detected at the front door
and work in teams. So I think it's really crucial to not call them as soft skills and hard skills, but to think of those skills as the skills you need to thrive in life, in work. And that's a combination of digital skills, communication skills, leadership skills, problem-solving skills, creativity and collaboration, empathy. It's a whole range of skills. And Lance was talking about taking people out of their environment. So, we are not an online school. It will be on campus, and people will work with each other, just like you used to work with each other in the office environment. But with COVID, we've all shifted to the online world, and it's highly sort of, the skills that you need now is to adapt to the new reality. So, I would say it's a combination of the two. It's not one or the other.
That's really interesting. I will rid myself of the hard skills and soft skills vernacular for now. And Joyce, I suppose a follow up, I think you were sort of implying it a little bit with the way that 01 founders are approaching training, but what would your suggestion be there to education providers? This is coming from David on the Q&A. The suggestion for education providers to aid them in how they help their students to enter the employment market, and how to think about that.
I think my biggest message to education providers is to think about potential, not profile, because every university or college or school looks for people who already are good, and then they can make them better. And they look at that by looking at what degree they've got, what A levels they've got, what GCSEs they've got. But think of somebody who doesn't fit into the traditional model of exams. How would you assess potential there? And 01 Founders has a model where we believe that everyone has potential, everyone can learn. It's just that they've not got the right opportunity, the right network, and the right way, the right pedagogy. And working with our partners, 01 Edu, they've got 25 years of pedagogy experience in training people with zero software engineering or coding skills and making them into a complete software engineer. And that doesn't just mean the technical skills, it means the holistic package that we were talking about earlier. So my message is think about potential, not profile, and give people an opportunity. Don't just assume that you can measure talent by an exam result.
That's really, really interesting. Great. I couldn't agree with you more. I did have to look up pedagogy though, on Google on the side, new word for me. Sam, I wonder, how do you guys at FinCap, how do you approach that that split between potential and then skills?
So, it's a difficult one. We are now really hiring for cultural fit, which is almost saying you're hiring for attitude. The age of it, hire for attitude, training skill. That is sort of it. So, there is, as you get more senior, the skill set which has to be aligned with the role, but still we are trying to hire for attitude and cultural fit absolutely first, which is more important to us than anything else, really. It trumps everything. So as you get more senior, the technical skill set becomes much more relevant, but it never overrides the first bit. So we've probably learned painful lessons of that not being the case, and we will actually now not hire a very big commission generator or someone who could do amazing things but doesn't fit the other skill set. And I think in a world where particularly post-COVID, the focus on ESG, what we call doing the right thing, trying to find the right sort of people from different backgrounds and being inclusive, that is becoming more and more important, that the attitude is the most important thing, because actually some people from backgrounds you will need to train up, and we won't ever get to inclusivity without doing that. So does that answer?
Absolutely. Sorry, Tracy, were you going to come in? You're now on mute. Just as a heads up.
Sorry, if I could just jump in there, because what Sam was talking about, the cultural fit and attitude being valued even more than the technical skills or job specific skills. That's absolutely the case across UK employers. So while I was at Nesta back in 2018, we worked with the City of London Corporation to carry out a survey across UK employers and the value of transferable skills. So, the things we talked about earlier, things that are around attitude, social and emotional skills. These are placed at much higher value compared to just, technical skills. And that goes to prove that in this world where certain jobs might disappear due to the pandemic, due to automation, due to the economic crisis, I think people who have these transferable skills, whether it's teamwork, communication, initiative, problem solving, these skills they can take from one industry to the other. And that's why I think there's a huge role for businesses, for government, and for the academic sector to work together to make sure that they're upskilling and reskilling people for a new world where there will be lots of jobs lost. Just I was looking up some statistics, like due to the pandemic, the unemployment rate is 5%, and 2.6 million people have now gone on to claim benefits because they don't have a job. Now, the world that we're living in, is highly uncertain, highly complex, but what can we do to help these people who've lost a job? And that can only happen not just by individuals themselves learning. Yes, that has to be the case. You need to have the motivation to learn, but you also need support, especially when you come from a disadvantaged background or when you've not had the same kind of education and network that most of us have had.
That's really interesting. I completely agree. And I think one of the things that we often see is there's an unreal amount of training that people can find for high quality training people can find for for free or very little online, but it's sometimes hard to know where to start. So for those people that are losing their jobs due to COVID, are there any? We had a question on the Q&A from Laura who asked whether there'd be any jobs that you think will become redundant post COVID or post this sort of digital change that we're seeing. What sort of skills do you think people shouldn't be retraining in?
I think definitely not retraining in skills that can be easily automated. So things like administrative task of data processing, or some of the skills which are really easy, especially the lower level of digital skills. So yes, there are 9 million people in the UK who don't have that lower level of digital skills, but some of these things, because of the acceleration in digital adoption over the last 2 years, I think people need to think about what is it that plays to their strengths. Everyone has a strength. It's finding your strength and building upon that. Because I think we live in a world where everyone is expected to have the same set of things. We teach our kids the same way. We want all of them to pass certain exams at certain age stages in life. But we know through science, through research, that everyone is different. And why are we expecting that we all should behave like the average? And there is no average. It's about finding your unique talent and helping you grow. So the things that you shouldn't be training in are things that can be easily automated, whereas the things that cannot be automated, so caring for somebody, being creative, being an artist, being a designer, being somebody who can think of complex problem solving approaches, those are the things that you should be training in.
That's really interesting. And Sam, it sounds like a lot of those things are things that you look to hire for and train for at ThinkApp. I wonder, do you have any sort of secret weapons for identifying people who be good learners or adopters to the sorts of things that you need them to do in the organisation?
I think most of it, and this is what has been so tricky about lockdown, most of it does come from a conversation and an actual meeting. And I don't know any psychometric testing that's managed to sort of pull this out very effectively, because so much of it is just your gut feel when you meet someone about how they think, how they are. And it doesn't generally take long and much questioning before you get a feel of how open is someone to things, how do they come across, how empathetic are they, just by how they're dealing with you and how they react to questions and how they make you feel. You can get a very, very good idea, but it's almost impossible to do without seeing that person. And you can do a bit on Zoom, and we've had to, but there's nothing that probably is better than a chat or a face-to-face.
Absolutely. Lance, I'd be interested in the NEF Plus, I suppose, curriculum on this sort of thing. What are the sort of, how, if you're teaching people to have an entrepreneurial mindset, what are the sort of modules that are actually useful there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few parts of it, and actually just touching on the whole kind of potential piece. And one of my favorite quotes is, if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life thinking that it's useless. And I think one of the hardest things about identifying, not just for hiring process, but also from our perspective, in terms of when we're speaking to candidates for the NEF Plus program, and those skills that we talk about around, learning agility, attitude, those kind of things, that they're harder to measure, in like on paper, in the way that other skills, I guess, not to use that hard and soft again, but those other skills can be measured, I guess, more easily. And I think, as Sam says, it's been tricky during COVID with not being able to actually just get in a room, meet somebody in person, and be able to kind of feel. It's the sensory element of it, which is difficult, or more difficult, shall we say, virtually, and has been through lockdown. In terms of what we actually look to teach on the NEF Plus program, obviously we're looking to identify elements. We're looking to find people that show potential in those areas that we can look to build on and enhance. And so a couple of the modules that we teach is entrepreneurial problem solving, leadership and communication, and advocacy, and those kind of skills that I do think, just again circling back to what Sam said early on around some of these, the growth mindset piece. It's actually harder once somebody has become ingrained through like a long period of time of thinking in a certain way. It's then harder to kind of break that and then allow them to think in a different way. And that's where I think the education system probably has a part to play in this, and really instilling or working with young people to actually encourage them to adopt that mindset at a younger age that they can then carry through with them. I think it's often difficult if somebody has really formed quite a rather than a growth mindset, if they've got a fixed mindset which they've had for a long period of time. It's much harder. It's been seen through research that it's then much harder to actually open them up in a different way. So when we're looking at candidates for NEF Plus, we're looking for a breadth of skills and competencies. The mindset, the ability, the attitude, and then we look to just really enhance in all areas those skills and allow them then to take it back into their business. And the great thing about that is that when the individual goes back into the business, they're then able to share the learnings with the rest of the team. And you know, it's almost contagious in that way. If you have somebody in your team who's, you know, really acting with a growth mindset, they're developing, they're pushing forward, that then rubs off on the rest of the team and has this really powerful ripple effect.
Can I ask, well, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they think about entrepreneurship and think about that sort of growth mindset, they're thinking about a visionary leader who has that entrepreneurial mindset in spades, and then everyone sort of does what they're told the rest of the way down the business. Lance, what's the benefit of having an entrepreneurial mindset in the actual employee base of the organization? Wouldn't you just end up going in different directions?
I think there are many benefits. I think that you know, not just for the actual individual, but as I say, I think there is this kind of ripple effect. And for me, something that's really powerful is the idea of actually, you know, shared and distributed leadership. You know, I think everybody in the team should feel empowered to be a leader, and it shouldn't be that, you know, this one person is kind of, we've just kind of got to follow and copy what they do. But it's almost, you know, allowing everybody else to feel like, believe and kind of come on that journey with you and actually feel like leaders themselves, so that everybody then adopts those skills and traits.
That's really interesting. And Joyce, Sam, would either of you like to, what are your perspectives on why it's important to have the entrepreneurial mindset within a business rather than just at the top?
I think, you know, there's the entrepreneurship, but there is intrapreneurship as well, right? Like, entrepreneurship is about spotting opportunities, being resourceful, making things happen. And you need that both if you're running your own business or you're working in a big company. So I think everyone needs to have leadership skills, entrepreneurial ability, and the ability to communicate and connect, the ability to listen and spot these trends. And I think, you know, I'm going to take a slightly different stance here. You know, it would be no fun if everyone is agreeing on everything that's being said, right? So I think, yes, it's hard to train people who have had a closed mindset for a long time, or who've gone through a really difficult phase where they have lost all confidence in themselves and they don't have the aspiration. But it's not impossible. You know, that's where information, advice, and guidance comes in. You know, everyone can. I come from a belief that everyone can change, everyone can learn, and everyone can improve. And you can do that by providing the right environment, providing the right opportunity, and providing the right role models. And I'll give you my own example, right? Like, I grew up in India, and when I was very young, I wasn't that great at math, especially the first time they introduced times table. And you had to be very quick in remembering what, 6 times 8 was. And the first time when I did it, I didn't do well in exam, and I felt like, oh, I'm so bad at maths. But if I had thought and held on to that belief that I'm bad at maths, I would have never become a computer engineer. But my mom was a teacher, and she believed that anyone can learn if they work hard, and if you're resilient, you can change. So every day I practiced maths, and with that practice, my scores went from 67% to 95% in maths in the same year, right? And that gave me the belief at a very young age that you can change if you work hard and if you bounce back from failure. So my message is, there is potential in everyone. It's just not been uncovered, or they've just not had the opportunity yet.
I totally agree with that as well. I think it's an absolute mindset. And actually, if I think about my own career, there were some things which I was good at, and other things which I wasn't or didn't have the confidence to do. And one of those things was speaking in public like this. 20 years ago, I would have, actually my first speech, I was sick twice in the loo before my speech. I practiced it for 3 months. I mean, it wasn't really a big deal, but to me it was huge. But I knew to get further in my career, I had to be able to do that, had to be able to speak confidently and comfortably. But the first time was awful, the second time's a bit less awful, the third time's not quite so awful, 20 times later, actually, you're almost enjoying it. And I never thought that would actually happen, but now it has. So if you don't push yourself out your comfort zone, which is very much, entrepreneurial growth mindset thinking, it's an attitude of, look, I haven't got the skill set, but I'm going to learn. And being self-aware is a huge, huge skill on its own. And that is probably the hardest to teach. You probably can't. If you are self-aware, you can constantly improve and keep building on skills that maybe you're not a natural at, because you can get good at anything. And that is utterly entrepreneurial thinking. That's where we employ people who have got that entrepreneurial thought process. And it just gives you a resilience, that the achievement, I think, that you get from having done something that was hard and then you end up doing it really well. It's unbelievable. And I think a phrase that always stuck with me is, when you go out your comfort zone is where the magic happens. And that is just it for me. That couldn't be more true. And I think failing is totally fine as well. But you've got to get to that magic. You've got to really push yourself.
I will try not to agree with everyone today. So, Joyce, I'd be really interested. You mentioned, it was a bit of a passing comment, but you mentioned when you were working at Nesta and you did a program with City of London Corporation on transferable skills. That speaks maybe, or implies maybe, a bit more of a sort of, there are set number of skills that are transferable from industry to industry. One of the challenges that we work with our clients on all the time is we've always hired the same sorts of people. They always come from the same sorts of backgrounds. They always look the same, sound the same, and do all the rest of it. But we want to be able to challenge ourselves and the people within the organization to think about skills in a different way. And I think a lot of the conversations we have are around exactly the same as we've been having today: potential, growth mindset, all the rest of that sort of thing. But I wonder whether you have a slightly practically, how do you put the business case for actually taking that risk? Because it's always safer and easier to do the same thing that you've always done.
You're absolutely right. And that's a fantastic question, because, people like themselves. And that's why there are very few women in top leadership positions, or very few people from disadvantaged backgrounds or ethnic minority backgrounds. So it is, because it's human nature to want to be around people that are like you, and your way of speaking, your way of working, your way of communicating might be comfortable and easy, but true innovation and true growth happens when you work with diverse people, because people come at it from different angles. They have different perspectives. They've had different life experiences. So the business case is, if you want to see an increase in revenue, if you want to bring true innovation into your company, then you need to hire diverse people. And how do you assess for these skills? Yes, that's a really hard thing to do, but it is possible. Sam was referring to psychometric tests. There are lots of tests that can help you assess different levels of skill, but also there are simpler things like the Skills Builder partnership that we, when I was at Nesta, we grant funded. So Tom Ravenscourt was a teacher in entrepreneurial education, and he realized that, it's not just about understanding your P&L or the marketing plan or the strategy. You need these skills, like we talked about earlier, the essential skills that a lot of kids are not taught in school or at home, because there's no common definition of what good looks like and how you progress from, say, a poor listener to a good listener to an excellent listener. And he's, I would highly recommend it as a practical tool that everyone can use, because they're already working with over 700 organizations. Over 200,000 learners have used it. And it's being used in schools, colleges, and by employers. And it's very simple. So there are 8 skills, like learning, speaking, problem solving, creativity, aiming high, staying positive, leadership, and teamwork. And each of those 8 skills have 15 levels. So it helps people self-assess to see, am I at this level? What skills might I already have? Where do I need to get to next? And that's the pathway. When you're learning technical skills, it's about baselining yourself, looking at the pathway and saying, okay, where do you need to get to, and what do you need to do? What do you need to evidence to get there? It's the same for these skills. It's not rocket science. It is, I think everyone can learn it as long as they understand where they stand and where they need to get to. So I highly recommend the Skills Builder Partnership and the framework that Tom has put together to look at how do you assess for these skills and how do you help people improve on their journey of learning. And I'm a strong believer in lifelong learning.
We will find a link to that and send it in the follow-up to that. That sounds really, really interesting. Sam, I wonder, I think I might have found a point of disagreement, so I'm excited about this. So Sam, I think you were, Sam, I think you were saying before that when you're looking for the sort of how people will contribute to the culture of the organization, you're looking at some of those things and you get a bit of a gut feel from meeting people face to face. Do you think you could ever be swayed in a hypothetical world if you could baseline and score those sorts of attributes? Do you think the time of the gut feel hire could be over if we could get data about those sorts of things?
I mean, potentially. It's much easier for me because ThinkOut is my baby. So, I've been working here for 24 years. It's the skills, it becomes so ingrained in who am I looking for. I can sort of do that fairly quickly, but because it's in my DNA, so you sort of know what you're looking for. What we're having trouble with actually is how now as we grow, and we're about 150 people now, growing quite fast, how we get that sort of instant gut reaction of what is the values all combined into one package down through different leaders. It is harder for them to do because they're not looking for that core DNA, but which is basically my DNA, into the business. That they do need help with looking at, setting out those values, setting out those core skills, and a scoring mechanism or some way of helping people with that would be great, because what we get is effectively might just be a CV, or it might be if it's a bit more senior, a headhunter talking through some experience. You might just get something on LinkedIn. It's generally a CV, and a CV doesn't really say very much, and it's still a bit like education now, which is my big bugbear. Everything's very so that was just someone trying to call me, get rid of that. Very academic, sort of skill based. It's not, it's not those other skills that are almost more important, and you're not getting them across on a piece of paper. So I think there's something about the CV. How can you add to that? Yeah, how do we make things a bit more fit for the working world as it is now and what it will be? And that goes through to education as well. I mean, the skill it's still very much about grades and academics. And we're looking to hire, you think, well, is that really almost even relevant for some roles? Well, there are plenty of kids that do not so well academically, but are amazing at certain things, whether it might be selling, creativity, which is more important. So yes, I do. I'll probably never not have my gut feel. Would be hard to turn that, but I definitely think there is a way to make that more consistent across a group hiring.
That's really interesting, and I think we picked up this topic on a different webinar that we ran around creating objective hiring processes. So I think I'll be able to dig out a recording and also send that around in the follow-up. Well, we are coming into the final stretch of the webinar, so I'd like to. I think whenever I think about skills in the future and all the rest of it, I am also a new dad, so that might be biased by all of that. But if you were talking to someone doing their, I guess just about to go into their GCSE selection and deciding what subjects they're gonna be doing, what advice would you give them to position themselves for success when they join the workforce? For the future? Lance, you've been quiet for a while, so I might start with you.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been I always felt certainly reflecting back anyway, very, very lucky that my parents always told me, you know, find what you enjoy doing, and if you enjoy it and apply yourself, then you will do well. So my advice would be for somebody, you know, just going into their GCSEs now is, don't worry too much about the grades. And that's not to say don't try, of course, apply yourself, study, but really try and find what you really enjoy, because it's at GCSE level, there's such a breadth of subjects. And certainly in my experience, I wasn't a natural academic across a wide breadth, but I was able to identify a couple of subjects that I really enjoyed, that, you know, I felt like that's what I want to do. And so I kind of honed in on those and really just focused on excelling in those and finding opportunities outside of school. Even at that age, that there are opportunities outside of school to develop some of the skills that the you know, the curriculum might not provide. You know, some of those experiences that you can't always get in the classroom. I've always been quite a practical learner, and so for me that was a really important part of my kind of education journey, was actually just identifying, you know, what is it you really enjoy, really focus on that, and then find opportunities outside of the exam hall, which absolutely is not the right place to test everybody. You know, some people, you know, may even have the, you know, the capability, the ability, if they were sat doing it, you know, at home in their bedroom, they would smash it, but then it comes into an exam room and the pressure gets to them, or the environment doesn't suit them. So I would just say, yeah, that would be my advice, was really focus on what it is you enjoy doing, apply yourself to it, and also, you know, think more broadly than the exam hall and the school classroom, because there's so much opportunity out there to find other ways to you know, build and enhance those skills that you kind of see for yourself in your career in the future.
Great answer, Sam. What would you say?
So broadly along those lines, there's an amazing book, it's called Grit, I don't know if you've read it, by Angela Duckworth, about, you know, what is the secret sauce of people who do well in life across any sector, you know, whether it's in sport, acting, in the Marines, business, whatever it might be. How do you get people to be the best? And it's a combination of two things: passion and resilience. And that's it. Those are the only two things. So nothing in there is about intelligence, nothing in there is about grades. It's about two things: passion, resilience. So yeah, what Lance was talking about, absolutely, that if you can light your fire with something, whatever that might be, what is your thing? Look, career guidance I don't think is great. So you just have to, you know, find those things out there that really might interest you. And once you've found your passion, you will start to try much harder. So that resilience, you have to keep trying. You do have to put in the work. You have to become resilient about failure. But if you're passionate about it and you try, you will get there. So I'm not saying don't try on your exams, it doesn't matter, because obviously there is an important part of it does matter. But that is not the secret to success, which is actually now almost, you know, scientifically proven. The stats in this book are very much about that. So yeah, anything on resilience and just finding what you love and just looking for things, searching for things, finding out what's out there. There are so many more jobs and skills than you ever think there are.
Absolutely. Joycey, agree, disagree?
Absolutely agree with what Lance and Sam have said. I will add just one additional thing, which is aim high, because a lot of people look around their current capability and think, oh, you know, that's not possible. And, you know, Sam talked about this earlier as well, like how she improved her public speaking skills, and I talked about how I improved my math skills. So I think it is possible for everyone to learn, and having that belief that if you set yourself a positive goal to work towards and surround yourself with people who can help you get there, and practice, experiment, see what works, what doesn't work, and really stay positive, because, you know, falling is part of life, right? But it's how quickly you can get up. And it's the same for your son, who's going to have many challenges in his life, but as long as you provide the right sort of mindset or the right environment and the right opportunity to build and practice these skills, then he'll be okay. There's this statistic that was published by the World Economic Forum that, more than 65% of kids entering primary school will be doing jobs that don't exist yet. And I think the only advice for your son or others who are doing their GCSEs and trying to figure out what career path they should go down or what they should study is stay curious, be open to learning, and really push yourself to go beyond your comfort zone, like, building upon the points made around passion and resilience as well. I think if you find your strength, your sweet spot, like whatever gets you excited and energized, then you'll find ways to be resilient and persevere in whatever goal you set yourself.
Who would have known that a webinar on skills of the future would be end on such an inspiring note from the three of you? So, well, thank you very much. I just wanted to, I know I always forget to do this bit, so just really quickly, what I wanted to say to all three of you, Sam, Lance and Joyce, thank you so much for joining us. I've learned a huge amount today, as I'm sure our audience has as well. We will be sending various bits and bobs through in an email as follow-up. If anyone has any follow-up questions, I know we had a couple of questions in the Q&A box that we didn't get a chance to get around to, please do send them through and we'll forward them on. And finally, please do join us for the webinars that we have upcoming. So we're looking mid next month into how to build a truly inclusive business. So that's looking at not just the element of hiring diverse talent, but also making sure that there's a level playing field for everyone once they've joined. And then we're also going to be looking into HR technology, and Sam, we will almost certainly be looking into some of those testing and talent identifying areas, which are really interesting, and coming some really interesting things out there. So we'll be looking into that as well. Any further insights, resources can be found on our insight side of our website, which will be in the follow-up email. But one more time, thank you, all three of you, for joining us today, and wishing everyone a very happy, sunny Thursday afternoon. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Ooh.